windshield wipers going off randomly. It's just freaking out. Whole truck just going nuts.
Trucks are built with a reputation for toughness, reliability, and safety. For many, they're not just vehicles, but lifelines. Machines meant to haul, tow, and conquer rugged terrain without fail. Yet, even in this world of heavy-duty engineering, mistakes have been made. Mistakes so severe, they turned trusted trucks into rolling hazards. From structural weaknesses that endangered drivers to mechanical flaws that caused catastrophic failures, history has shown that even the most respected automakers aren't immune to fatal design errors. Some of these flaws led to lawsuits, recalls, and plummeting sales. Others left behind a darker legacy, stories of accidents that should never have happened. In today's video, we're counting down 11 trucks with fatal design flaws, each one a chilling reminder that toughness doesn't always mean safety. Buckle up, because some of these stories might just make you rethink the trucks you thought were bulletproof. Number 11. Ford F-150, the exploding airbags. The Ford F-150 is one of the most iconic trucks in America, often celebrated as the backbone of the working class. It's been the top-selling truck for decades, but even legends can stumble. In the mid-2000s, Ford faced a nightmare with its crown jewel. The 2004 to 2008 F-150 models were plagued by defective airbags supplied by Takata. On paper, airbags are life-saving devices designed to deploy instantly in a crash to cushion and protect passengers. But in these trucks, the opposite sometimes happened. The flaw wasn't just in the timing or the deployment, it was in the chemical inflators themselves. Over time, moisture and heat degraded the propellant inside, causing the airbags to explode with shrapnel instead of cushioning. Drivers expecting protection were instead met with metal fragments shooting directly at them. This wasn't a minor glitch, it was a fatal flaw. Injuries, hospitalizations, and even deaths were tied to this defect, and the lawsuits quickly followed. Millions of F-150s were recalled, marking one of the darkest chapters in Ford's truck history. What made this scandal worse was how long it took for the full scope of the problem to come to light. By the time the recalls were underway, thousands of drivers had already been exposed to the risk. For many loyal customers, the F-150 was more than just a truck. It was part of their livelihood. But this design flaw shattered trust. Headlines about exploding airbags stuck to the F-150's name, reminding buyers that even the toughest truck in America could hide a deadly defect beneath its steel frame. The incident forced both Ford and Takata into a storm of lawsuits, settlements, and government scrutiny. The Takata airbag scandal would go on to become the largest automotive recall in U.S. history, with the F-150 right in the middle of it. And while Ford eventually made amends through recalls and replacements, the damage to its reputation during those years can't be erased. The lesson here? Even the best-selling truck in America isn't immune to catastrophic oversights. And for some, that flaw cost far more than just money. It cost lives. Number 10. Dodge Ram 1500. The dashboard of death. The Dodge Ram of the mid to late 90s is remembered for its bold, aggressive styling that redefined what a pickup could look like. Sales soared, and suddenly Dodge had a truck that could compete head-to-head with Ford and Chevy. But beneath that muscular exterior lay one of the most infamous flaws in truck history: the brittle, crumbling dashboard. At first glance, a cracked dash might seem like a cosmetic issue, something annoying but not dangerous. But this wasn't just about looks. Over time, the dashboards in these Rams disintegrated into razor-sharp shards of plastic. Sunlight, heat, and poor material quality combined to make them fragile. And when they finally gave way, they didn't just crumble. They fractured into jagged pieces. Now imagine being in a collision, or even just a minor fender bender. Instead of a cushioned, safe environment, drivers and passengers were suddenly surrounded by hard, knife-like fragments capable of causing cuts, punctures, and eye injuries. The dashboard, meant to house vital controls and protect passengers from sharp edges, became a hazard in itself. Owners flooded dealerships and online forums with complaints. Lawsuits followed, with many calling the defect a dashboard of death. And while Dodge issued some fixes and replacement parts, the sheer scale of the problem was overwhelming. Many owners had no choice but to cover the dashboard with mats or makeshift panels to avoid further crumbling. But here's where it gets worse. Those shattered dashboards didn't just pose a direct injury risk, they also interfered with other safety systems. In some cases, airbag deployment was compromised because the crumbling dash pieces interfered with the modules. That meant that in a crash, airbags might not deploy correctly, amplifying the danger. Despite the outrage, Dodge managed to ride out the storm without issuing a massive recall. But the reputation damage was lasting. To this day, if you mention a late 90s Ram 1500 to a truck enthusiast, chances are they'll bring up the crumbling dash before anything else. For a truck that looked so tough on the outside, it was ironic and tragic that one of its deadliest flaws came from something as simple as cheap plastic inside the cabin. Number 9. Chevrolet C/K Series, the side-saddle fuel tanks. Few trucks are as iconic as the Chevrolet CK Series. For decades, it dominated roads and farms across America. But during the mid-1970s through the late 1980s, a design decision turned these beloved workhorses into potential fire traps. The issue? The infamous side-saddle fuel tank design. Instead of placing the fuel tank in a protected spot within the frame rails, Chevrolet engineers mounted it on the outside of the frame, directly beneath the truck's doors. The idea was to save space and increase capacity, but in practice, it created one of the deadliest vulnerabilities in pickup history. In a side impact collision, the tank was exposed to crushing force and punctures, leading to fuel leaks and explosive fires. The statistics were grim. Hundreds of fatal accidents were linked to these trucks, many involving fiery crashes where victims had little to no chance of survival. Investigations revealed that the placement of the tanks made them up to 20 times more likely to catch fire compared to other trucks of the same era. The problem became so notorious that the trucks were dubbed the most dangerous vehicles on the road by safety advocates. Lawsuits piled up, families demanded justice, and eventually, government scrutiny landed on General Motors. Yet, instead of issuing a full recall, GM chose a controversial path. In 1994, rather than repairing or replacing the tanks, the company offered owners a coupon worth $1,000 toward a new GM vehicle. To many, this felt like an insult compared to the loss of lives. Media coverage was relentless. Explosive crash tests aired on television, showing just how easily these trucks could burst into flames. Public trust in GM suffered a major blow, and the side saddle scandal became a permanent stain on the brand's history. Even today, collectors and enthusiasts acknowledge the risk. Owning a C/K series from those years comes with a grim footnote, a reminder that a truck celebrated for its durability carried a hidden flaw that could prove fatal. The side-saddle fuel tank controversy is more than just a design failure. It's a case study in corporate accountability, where saving money and cutting corners cost far more than GM ever anticipated. Number 8. Toyota Tacoma, the frame that rotted away. Toyota built its reputation in the truck market on durability. The Tacoma, introduced in the mid-1990s, quickly became the go-to pickup for drivers who wanted reliability without the bulk of a full size. It was compact, efficient, and marketed as a truck that would last forever. But under the surface, a silent killer was eating these trucks alive: the frame. The problem stemmed from poor rust-proofing and weak protective coatings on the chassis. In regions where winter salt and moisture were common, the frames of Tacomas began corroding at an alarming rate. This wasn't just surface rust, it was deep structural rot. Trucks that looked perfectly fine on the outside were, in reality, riding on skeletons that could snap at any moment. The danger wasn't theoretical. Countless owners reported catastrophic failures, including frames that cracked in half while driving, suspensions collapsing through weakened steel, and tow hitches literally tearing off the truck. A vehicle built to haul loads and handle rugged conditions was reduced to a ticking time bomb. The worst part? Many of these trucks failed inspection tests long before their engines or transmissions showed signs of age. People who bought Tacomas for Toyota's legendary reliability were shocked to find their frames disintegrating while the rest of the truck still ran strong. Faced with mounting complaints and growing media attention, Toyota was forced into one of the largest buyback programs in automotive history. Thousands of owners were offered either free frame replacements or full buyouts at prices well above market value. While this move softened some of the outrage, it also confirmed the severity of the flaw. Toyota had essentially admitted that their trucks were unsafe to drive. For a brand that prided itself on bulletproof engineering, the Tacoma's rust scandal was a devastating black eye. It showed that even the most respected automakers could overlook something as basic and as vital as long-term corrosion protection. Today, whenever you see a first-gen Tacoma still on the road, there's a good chance its frame has already been replaced. The trucks that didn't make it? Many ended up in junkyards far earlier than their loyal owners ever expected. Number 7. Ford Explorer Sport Track, the rollover risk. When Ford introduced the Explorer Sport Track, it aimed to combine the comfort of an SUV with the utility of a pickup. On paper, it was a smart move, an adventurous lifestyle truck that could handle both family outings and hauling gear. But beneath the marketing hype lurked a dangerous flaw that would earn the Sport Track and its Explorer SUV sibling a notorious reputation, a design that made it dangerously prone to rollovers. The issue wasn't just driver error or bad luck. The very design of the Sport Track contributed to the danger. Its high center of gravity, narrow track width, and suspension tuning created the perfect storm for instability. In emergency maneuvers, like swerving to avoid an obstacle, the truck was far more likely to tip over than competitors in its class. Adding fuel to the fire was the infamous Firestone tire debacle. Many sport tracks were equipped with Firestone tires that were prone to tread separation at highway speeds. When combined with the truck's rollover-prone design, the result was catastrophic. Blowouts often led to immediate loss of control, and in too many cases, deadly rollovers. The statistics were shocking. Reports showed that rollover accidents involving these vehicles resulted in hundreds of deaths and thousands of injuries. Lawsuits piled up against both Ford and Firestone, each company pointing fingers at the other, while grieving families demanded accountability. The controversy became a media storm, tarnishing Ford's reputation for safety and pushing Firestone's brand to the brink of collapse. The fallout was massive. Ford had to recall millions of Firestone tires, and the Explorer line, including the Sport Track, was forever scarred by the association with rollover fatalities. For years afterward, jokes about the Explorer being a flip-over haunted Ford, even as newer models improved safety. The Sport Track itself never recovered in popularity, and eventually, the line was discontinued. Its legacy? A chilling reminder that no amount of style or marketing can cover up dangerous design flaws. For truck and SUV buyers of the early 2000s, the Explorer Sport Track represented more than a failed experiment. It symbolized the deadly cost of prioritizing design trends over fundamental stability and safety. Number 6. Nissan Frontier, the transmission killer. The Nissan Frontier built its reputation as a tough, mid-size pickup that could keep up with Toyota's Tacoma while offering a bit more muscle under the hood. For many, it was the perfect balance of capability and affordability. But hidden within these trucks from 2005 to 2010 was a ticking time bomb, a fatal flaw in the cooling system that could quietly destroy the transmission. The problem stemmed from a defective design in the radiator. Inside the radiator, the transmission cooler was poorly engineered, and over time, coolant began to leak into the transmission fluid. This wasn't just a minor leak, it was a total contamination. Once coolant mixed with transmission fluid, it turned into a foamy, milky sludge that stripped gears, destroyed bearings, and ultimately led to complete transmission failure. Owners described the issue with a grim nickname: "Strawberry Milkshake of Death." At first, drivers would notice subtle symptoms: slipping gears, rough shifts, strange noises. But in many cases, the failure came suddenly, leaving owners stranded with a dead truck and a repair bill often exceeding $5,000 to $7,000. What made this flaw so devastating was the timing. Many Frontiers experienced the failure right after their warranties expired, leaving customers furious and financially crushed. Lawsuits followed, with thousands of owners banding together in class action cases against Nissan. The company eventually extended warranties and offered partial compensation, but for many, the damage was already done, both to their trucks and to Nissan's reputation in the truck market. Worse yet, this wasn't just a reliability issue, it was a safety concern. Transmission failure on the highway could cause sudden loss of power, leading to accidents and close calls. For trucks that were supposed to haul loads, tow trailers, and handle rugged work, the idea that the very heart of the drivetrain could implode was unacceptable. The fallout was severe. Many loyal Nissan truck owners jumped ship to Toyota, Ford, or GM after the ordeal. And while later Frontier models corrected the flaw, the strawberry milkshake of death remains one of the most infamous design disasters in mid-size truck history. For Nissan, it was proof that one overlooked design choice could take a strong contender and turn it into a cautionary tale of mechanical failure. Number 5. Chevrolet Silverado 1500. The steering nightmare. The Chevrolet Silverado has long been marketed as like a rock, a dependable, no-nonsense truck that Americans could trust to do the heavy lifting. But for thousands of owners of the 2014 to 2018 Silverado 1500, that promise fell apart the moment they lost control of their steering wheel without warning. The flaw was rooted in the truck's electronic power steering system. Under certain conditions, often during low-speed maneuvers like turning into a parking lot or backing out of a driveway, the system would suddenly cut out. Imagine cranking the wheel, only to have it lock or resist movement entirely for a split second. For some, that was all it took to collide with curbs, walls, or worse, oncoming traffic. This wasn't just a minor inconvenience, it was terrifying. Drivers reported complete steering loss, followed by sudden jerks, as the power assist returned unpredictably. The flaw was traced back to a software glitch and voltage fluctuations within the steering module, but by then, hundreds of complaints had already poured in. General Motors eventually recalled more than 1 million trucks, admitting that the defect could increase the risk of crashes. Investigations revealed that even though many incidents occurred at low speeds, the danger was magnified when towing or maneuvering in tight spaces, situations where precision steering is critical. For some owners, the glitch turned their trucks into unpredictable hazards. The recalls fixed the software, but the damage to Chevrolet's reputation lingered. Truck owners depend on reliability, and steering is the one system that simply cannot fail. To experience sudden loss of control in a vehicle weighing over 2 tons was unacceptable, and many loyal Chevy buyers began questioning whether GM was cutting corners in its engineering. For the Silverado, the episode was more than just a technical glitch. It was a reminder that modern electronics, while convenient, can also introduce vulnerabilities. Trucks are supposed to inspire confidence behind the wheel, but for too many Silverado owners, that confidence turned into fear every time they made a simple turn. Even years later, the 2014 to 2018 Silverado models are remembered for this flaw, a scar on an otherwise celebrated nameplate. And for GM, it was proof that a truck's strength isn't just in its frame or its engine. It's in the systems drivers rely on every second to stay safe. Number 4. Jeep Gladiator, the rear axle disaster. The Jeep Gladiator returned with fanfare in 2019, reviving a name that blended Jeep's off-road heritage with the utility of a pickup truck. Buyers flocked to it for its rugged styling, trail-ready features, and the promise of adventure on 4 wheels. But for owners of the early 2020 and 2021 models, excitement quickly turned into alarm when a critical flaw surfaced in one of the most vital components, the rear axle. The problem stemmed from improper heat treatment during the manufacturing process. The result? Rear axle housings that were far weaker than they should have been. Under normal driving, many owners didn't notice anything unusual. But when hauling heavy loads, towing, or tackling off-road trails, the very tasks the Gladiator was built for, the axles began to fail. Drivers reported clunking noises, sudden vibrations, and, in the worst cases, total axle fractures. A broken axle doesn't just strand a truck. It can lead to catastrophic loss of control, especially at highway speeds or on steep, uneven terrain. For a vehicle marketed as trail-rated, this wasn't just a disappointment. It was a betrayal of the Jeep legacy. Fiat Chrysler, now Stellantis, quickly issued recalls once the defect was confirmed. Thousands of Gladiators were pulled back for inspection, with many requiring full axle replacements. The issue sparked a wave of frustration among new owners, many of whom had paid premium prices for what they thought was a bulletproof off-road truck. The timing couldn't have been worse. The Gladiator was Jeep's long-awaited entry into the pickup market after decades away, and the rear axle scandal immediately cast doubt on its toughness. Critics argued that Jeep had rushed the truck into production to capitalize on hype, cutting corners in the process. Even though Jeep addressed the flaw through recalls, the reputation damage was significant. For a brand built on trust in extreme conditions, from deserts to mountain trails, the idea that its newest truck could fail under stress shook consumer confidence. The Gladiator's rear axle issue may not have claimed as many headlines as older, deadlier truck scandals, but it underscored a vital truth. Even in modern times, when trucks are more advanced than ever, a single overlooked flaw can undermine the entire purpose of a pickup. Number 3. Ford Ranger, the seatbelt and airbag catastrophe. The Ford Ranger was once America's favorite compact pickup. Affordable, versatile, and easy to maintain, it became the go-to truck for young drivers and working-class families. But between 1999 and 2006, certain Ranger models carried not just a flaw, but a deadly combination of safety failures that turned this small pickup into a serious risk. The issue centered on two critical systems: the seatbelts and the airbags. In many cases, seatbelt pretensioners, devices meant to tighten belts instantly in a crash, malfunctioned and exploded. Instead of protecting occupants, they sent sparks, flames, and shrapnel flying inside the cabin. Imagine being in a collision and suddenly being burned or cut by the very system designed to save you. But the nightmare didn't end there. Like its bigger cousin, the F-150, the Ranger also suffered from defective Takata airbags. These airbags, already infamous across the auto industry, could detonate with excessive force, sending metal fragments directly at passengers. Combined with the defective seatbelts, the Ranger had not one but two potentially lethal safety flaws sitting inches away from its drivers. The tragedies were real. Multiple fatalities were directly linked to these defects in the Ford Ranger, with families left devastated by accidents that should have been survivable. The recalls were massive and urgent, with Ford eventually taking the extraordinary step of telling certain Ranger owners not to drive their trucks at all until repairs were made. Dealerships scrambled to provide replacements, but for many, the warning came far too late. The situation highlighted one of the most chilling aspects of automotive design flaws. When safety systems fail, they don't just fail quietly. They can actively make accidents worse. A seatbelt that burns its wearer, or an airbag that fires shrapnel, turns a collision into a death sentence. For Ford, the Ranger crisis was devastating to its reputation in the compact truck market. What had once been a symbol of affordability and reliability became synonymous with danger. Even years later, many buyers remain wary of Rangers from that era, and the Takata airbag scandal still haunts Ford's legacy. The lesson? No matter how tough or practical a truck may seem, its true value lies in how well it protects the people inside. And for thousands of Ranger owners, that protection failed in the worst possible way. Number 2. GMC Sierra, the faulty brake lines. The GMC Sierra is often praised as the professional's choice, a workhorse designed to rival the Silverado with premium touches and solid dependability. But for owners of the 2007 to 2013 models, a hidden flaw put every trip in jeopardy: dangerously corroding brake lines. Brakes are non-negotiable in any vehicle, but in these Sierras, they were a ticking time bomb. The steel brake lines used by General Motors lacked proper corrosion protection, especially in regions where road salt was common during winter months. Over time, the lines rusted from the outside in, weakening until they suddenly ruptured. Imagine pressing your foot on the brake pedal while hauling a trailer downhill, only to feel it sink to the floor with no resistance. That's exactly what many Sierra owners experienced. Sudden and complete brake failure. No warning lights, no squealing pads, just instant loss of stopping power. Thousands of complaints poured into the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, NHTSA. Drivers reported terrifying close calls and accidents, some resulting in injuries and fatalities. Investigations showed that the problem wasn't isolated, it was systemic, affecting not only Sierras, but also Silverado twins built on the same platform. GM initially resisted a massive recall, arguing that corrosion was a maintenance issue. But after relentless pressure, lawsuits, and damning reports, the company was forced to take action. By then, many owners had already paid thousands out of pocket for repairs, or seen their trucks written off in crashes caused by the failure. The scandal was especially damaging because trucks like the Sierra are bought with trust. They're expected to perform under pressure, whether towing, hauling, or navigating rough terrain. A weak brake system undermined that trust completely. For professional drivers, losing brakes wasn't just inconvenient, it was life-threatening. The Sierra's brake line fiasco became another cautionary tale in GM's history, reinforcing the idea that even seemingly small engineering shortcuts can lead to catastrophic consequences. Today, those model years remain infamous among truck enthusiasts, a reminder that professional grade doesn't always live up to its slogan. Number 1. Ford Pinto-based Courier, the Firetrap pickup. At the top of our list is a truck that carried one of the most infamous design flaws in automotive history. The Ford Courier, introduced in the early 1970s as a compact pickup, was based heavily on the Ford Pinto's engineering. And with it, the Courier inherited one of the deadliest design flaws ever seen in a vehicle: a dangerously placed fuel tank that turned even minor collisions into infernos. The flaw was as shocking as it was simple. The fuel tank sat directly behind the rear axle, exposed and vulnerable in rear-end crashes. Even low-speed impacts could puncture the tank or rupture the filler neck, sending gasoline pouring onto hot surfaces. The result? Explosions and fires that left little chance for survival. The Pinto had already become a symbol of corporate negligence, with lawsuits revealing that Ford executives knew about the flaw, but calculated it would cost less to settle lawsuits than to redesign the tank. The Courier, built with that same architecture, carried the same deadly risk, except now in a pickup that people used for work, hauling, and everyday driving. Accidents mounted. Families of victims demanded justice. Court cases exposed damning internal documents showing Ford's cold cost-benefit analysis of human lives versus engineering fixes. The Courier, though less infamous than the Pinto itself, became guilty by association, cementing its place as one of the most dangerously flawed trucks ever sold. The scandal rocked Ford's reputation. Safety advocates and consumer watchdogs pointed to the Courier and Pinto saga as evidence that profits had been placed above human lives. It led to landmark lawsuits, record settlements, and a permanent stain on Ford's image during the 1970s. Even decades later, the Pinto and its Courier sibling are shorthand for design disasters. Ask any auto historian, and they'll tell you, this wasn't just a flawed truck. It was a deadly gamble by one of America's biggest automakers. The Courier may have been marketed as an affordable, efficient little pickup, but for too many, it became a fire trap on wheels. And that's why it takes the #1 spot on our list of trucks with fatal design flaws. Trucks are built to be symbols of strength, but as we've seen, even the toughest machines can hide dangerous flaws. From exploding airbags and brittle dashboards to rusting frames and fire-prone fuel tanks, these 11 trucks proved that design mistakes can have devastating consequences. Some were recalled, others quietly faded from the roads, but all left behind lessons the auto industry could never ignore. For drivers, it's a reminder to look beyond the badge and reputation, because safety should always come first. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more deep dives into automotive history.